good afternoon. It was a wonderful lunch, but hopefully we will not go to sleep. This is going to be half an hour only. Let's try to get the best use out of it. We need insights, I'm sure. We need workshops to study, research. But many times, they don't tell us how to do it, right? So it's just like the command of giving good recommendations to your client and do what you're doing and do what you're doing best, but we do not know how. So in this case, what we would like to do is to share a specific airline that is called Aerome. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I don't think so. I don't think there's no one who does not know or has heard about Aerome. So the point is that we have thousands of people flying out of Mexico every day. And out of these people, or most of them is buying online. That's where we need to talk about the impact that this will have.
Ahora sí. Ya.
Listo, ya estamos. Ok.
So, as I was saying, every day we have 100,000 people, flights around the world, and most of them has done it through the internet. As a matter of fact, 8 out of 10 people buy online. It could be through the website or some other kind of engines. But most users then buy online. That's the point. That's why it is so important for us to understand what is happening. Why are they buying online? Where from? Where did they start? Their search, their demands, of course. And that's what we need to understand since we want to move forward in our decision-making process for the future. Well, you're all aware of what Aerome is. Let's not stop here, but as you might know, it's one of the largest ones in Mexico. It has full vacancy in Mexico. The traffic volume on the site and the website is also huge. That's why it's so important that they would be measuring or doing some kind of follow-up to what's happening in that site. So the first thing that we would like to mention is what did we need to measure? That was the question. Of course, we all say we need big data, analytics, etc. But first of all, what do I really need to know? What is the information that I need to have to make these decisions? Because we might be measuring the color of the garments. And I could save that too. But at the end of the day, that will not help me to make any decisions, right? So I think that the most important thing before making decisions is to find out exactly what we need to know so as to implement and work with that data and make better decisions.
Normalmente, en la mayoría de los e-commerce,
Regularly, in most e-commerce posts, it could be traveling or some other type of post as well. We might look at engines that are for retail or entertainment type of sites. E-commerce, even if they are basic, they have this type of implementation. We know where the transaction was or movement, as we called the affiliation taxes or revenue, how much was for shipping, etc. That's the basic thing we would like to try to understand, at least at a transactional level. And also, at an item level, we could know what we sold, at what price. Within enhanced e-commerce, we might even know how many times this was printed. So, how could we understand better what's happening? And how could we go in depth into this measurement? Well, in Aerome, this is exactly what we did, and we started by asking ourselves, what do we need? What do we need to go beyond? Not only what we sold, or how much, of course. Because the revenue is important, but how much out of it was taxes? We know that? Of course we do. There's a financial team that I know if I spend $1 million in my credit card, that's a rough number. So how could we contribute additional information to get info from the site of all of these people who are bidding there? So in this specific case, we used a 360 suite from Google Analytics, and everything was done through Google Tag Manager, trying to rely very, very short, not very much in the rest of the data. No, not data layers by all means, because we didn't want to have hits or things like that. But we wanted to have other types of data. Unfortunately, we cannot listen to that comment because it's not on the microphone. The answer is that the decision was because we wanted to know what was being measured specifically. And originally, if it was a basic e-commerce, we could have left it there. But the point is that when we decided that we wanted much more information to make certain decisions, then the basic tool was not enough. So, data volume. The main reason was data volume, full data. You know that most of the times analytics is just showing the data, saying that it's 0.01% of your users. So, of course, that does not help us to get somewhere else. So we picked 360 to have the best possible data. The more reliable they were, the better. Not even Google Analytics, nothing matched what the revenue area was stating, because revenue was saying that we sold such an amount of tickets. I don't even have the 70% of that. So what we needed was, in fact, something that could really support this massive amount of data. That's exactly what I'm going to dive into right now. When we needed to understand regarding the demand of the site, the customized dimensions or filters were not good enough. The basic Google Analytics leaves up as to 20 personalized, and I'm betting on that. I can tell you that any retail could finish or could deplete those filters really very fast. So 20 were not enough, we needed more. And this is just something that we needed: full, complete information and massive information. We also used GTM, trying to rely the least possible on the data layers, as I said. Regularly, this takes a lot of time, and you need to send the tickets, and then if you forget it, then you need a new hit or a new event or another ticket to IT and wait for 20 days more in order to get an answer. And the same thing with GTM, Google Tag Manager. We needed to know the things that could be measured immediately.
And then, in general, this is the way everything starts when you buy something in Aero Mexico or any retail. As you might imagine, you'll search for something and you'll arrive to a website where you will have an offer that you as a user are looking for. And this one is from Santiago to Mexico. We want a quote from Santiago, Chile to the city of Mexico. And then you have the origin, destination, if you want a round trip, if you want just one way, how many passengers, if you need a multi-city. Let's say that you go for a destination, then you come back from another destination, etc. What's the information I could get from here? And that's what we started. What is it that we want to measure? From this booking engine, or call it whatever you want, search, internal search, what is the information we could get from this just a sort of a short interaction? After the interaction, regularly the user will buy. In this case, it says 21,000 Mexican peso. The user will buy, and the idea is that we could compare how much is the previous stage, which is demand, and then the purchase itself. We were interested in, okay, it is sold, it's sold. So you have sold a trip to Santiago, one trip to Santiago with this confirmation number. The amount of money they paid is such and such. How many dollars we know, as they have that in their data. But we didn't know what the user was doing before this. How can we then know what's the demand? What are the destinations they quote? What are the dates they were using or checking? What was the date in which they started the quote? If there's any specific date, so the user says, I'm going to start planning my Christmas vacation or next vacation spread. How can we detect these points? And that's what we approach first, and mainly to get deeper into measuring. On one hand, we were looking for how to know which is my best quoted destination and compare them. We could say we were analyzing an X origin from, let's say, Santiago, and from Santiago to what sort of destination is that user quoting? Oh, they're quoting Mexico or, I don't know, Miami, etc. So, based on that original search, which was directly in the website, we could start understanding what is the destination that the user is quoting for and what dates. And that was filtered for a specific date. Let's say we wanted to understand people in Santiago just today for what destination, or the other way around. I want to know without the date what is the destination they are expecting to have on September the 15th or December the 25th. Not the date. Let's say people in Santiago who wants to travel on December 25th, which is the destination they're looking for, and upon that, we work advertising that we have been talking about audience segmentation, understanding what the user needs, what they search for. I have an input now, which is big, of that the user is looking for. So I'm in Santiago. I want to go to Miami on December 25th. So from now on, I know what they want. We don't need to say, okay, it's out of Mexico, just buy me. We can now do remarketing with a more specific destination, saying buy Miami because it is a rebate price. Or I know that you want Miami. If you buy now, you take 10% off. From the dates, we could obtain this. And also, at which of these points I have differences or discrepancies between what is sold and quoted. And it is important to detect for us and say, I don't know what happens to travel to Timbuktu on the 30th of November, but there's lots of people quoting to travel to that place in that date and they're not buying it. Look here. You don't see what it is reading, but green was search and orange is sales. We have a peak of sales for a specific date, but the sales are not the same volume. Then we could detect opportunities. How much money am I putting away on top of the table because of not having sold these tickets? And you could see N factors. Maybe competitors with better prices. Maybe I don't have availability of flights through it, or in those dates, maybe the flights are full. So even if they look for it, I have no any other flights, no many other flights. So we could start detecting a discrepancy between what's a search and sales and detecting opportunities that I could get rescuing through an advertising guideline so I could plan my strategy for the next week or next month. So I could tell, you know what, this is an interesting destination, Timbuktu. Then I'm interested, and especially in this date, what am I going to do to promote it and being able to move the data? On the other hand, on that same search engine, I could obtain what is the anticipation where people start quoting or searching for a destination, which is what I said. I'm interested, like in the Christmas vacations, December 25th. So for December 25th, people flying to or going to the beach, what is the anticipation they're using for quoting? So you could compare the volume, the anticipation of quotes with the anticipation of sales, and it should differ. Look at the peak of sales. The peak of searches is a little before, but the purchase is anticipated. And in fact, maybe it is in the opposite sides. Normally, what they do, they anticipate with enough time the search, and then you could detect on how much anticipation they buy. It could be that they search for 1 month before and eventually they buy it 15 days earlier because they quote, they compare, they see destinations, they see the hotels. But in between, if we want to promote this beach destination for Christmas, if we were not present with some anticipation, we're not going to get it. So people quoted, let's say, 50 days of anticipation. If I want to sell that 1 day before, then I could say, the flight is tomorrow and it's empty. Let's do the promotion. We're not going to make it. Anticipation was 50 days. So people bought with 50 days anticipation. So if you want to revert that now, you're not going to make it. And that helps to prepare yourself for certain seasons. Let's say that you say for Christmas, I'm going to take the whole thing for December the 1st. Because this is what will happen. Not everyone is going to quote and buy on December the 1st. Depending on your destination, they have already quoted and bought the special destination. So this will help you plan specifically what's my strategy to get my goals. So I need to sell 10,000 tickets from this origin to this destination, as this is the most popular in this season. So we see the graph, the destination, the dates, and then we plan what's the anticipation or what is the strategy that we're going to use to reach our goal. That said, if we see the table, we are planning several trips. Could be Mexico Lima or Mexico Cancun. And then I want to promote these two flights, two routes for these flights or trips. Mexico Lima will be November the 25th. You are now on 3rd. So Mexico Lima will be November the 25th. As an average, we know that the user will take 19 days to purchase that, 19 days before the flight, right? So we are on time to sell. Today is November the 3rd, and they want to fly on November the 25th. I have time because I am on that range of 19 days yet. So the time is perfect, ready. How many searches in the site, in the quote, my site, how many quotes? I had 15 searches, but only 100 sales. So my sale opportunity is 400, as I had 400 quotes that I did not sell. There was 500 search, 100 sales, and 400 they were not sold. So we have an opportunity. And the interesting thing here is that you get the data that you have in the analytics with the data that you might get from the outside. In this case, margin. The margin for profit in analytics, you do not have it, but you could obtain it. Just like the opportunity or the occupation, this flight was up to 55%. That means that half the plane is empty. I have a real opportunity of selling 400, and I could rescue 400 searches on top of the table that I did not sell, and I have half an empty plane. So these will be a route that I could promote now in order to achieve that for that date where they're flying. It is almost full, if not full. So I have a competitive rate compared to my competitor airlines. And if you have a competitive rate, then I'm not an exclusive route. If I'm in the exclusive route, it is simpler because I'll simply promote it and I don't have to care about any price issue because it's not sold because of the price. Mexico Lima will be today still on time of promoting if we want to reach it as a goal. But Mexico Cancun, which is a trip that is so much bought as people would go to the beach and people would go through Mexico to get to Cancun, people they do really little anticipation. It's a short flight and it's not that expensive. So anticipation is 3 days here. If we are now on November the 3rd and it's 3 days, then I'm kind of close and tight because that means they buy the tickets today to fly on November the 6th. So it's a little tight for that goal. And you know what? I had 1,000 searches, and from this 1,000, I had 800 that were complete. So the gap is not that broad. I had 200 searches, and the money on top of the table is not that big or broad. And also, that trip of occupation is already 95%. So that flight is almost full. Maybe the decision is okay, I won't go on, I won't move forward on this, trying to search or invest in order to move that destination. It's almost full. I had not that much opportunity on top of the table, so it will be better that I could focus my effort and my money on a destination that requires this support now. I have mentioned many times the sales opportunity, which is a number that is very interesting to understand. What if I say, you know what? To this card, we added $150,000 to the card, $150,000, and you sold just 100. That is to say that between the moment in which they added into the card and they decided to buy, you lost $50,000. That's a lot. So you could decide on that metric what is working and what is not working, so lose we don't lose money through this checkout process. The idea, in fact, as long as it's possible, the idea is to decrease the volume of opportunity that I did not sell. You could have this opportunity by destination, origin, dates, channel. You could segment it in any one, but you will optimize so this number decreases to the maximum and you keep the maximum of the money. And finally, you could use this piece of data to try to learn from the past, just as if you were behaving with certain destination and dates in the past. What I have talked about so far is in this month, what are the dates you quote for, and to foresee what the users are doing right away. Now, we can learn from what was done before, previously in the past behavior. Normally, in an industry like travel, the seasonality hits hard. It is very likely that this behavior of dates will be kept year to year. So we could say, you know what, destination 1 to travel on date A was bought with very little anticipation, which is quoted with very little anticipation, which is the curve in the upper side. And the lower side, you see which are the dates whereby it could be a peak on September the 16th. So you have a peak of purchase and people will buy with very little anticipation. In that case, that is not necessary to promote the destination long way before because we know that anticipation is short. But there are some other destinations, like destination number 2, which has got a sort of a screen of anticipation, I'd say, but it's very broad. Like the peaks are between 2 days and it grows kind of 25 days. So you have between 22 and 25 days to promote this destination for this specific date. Destination 3, same thing. Anticipation is broader and broader here. We could even have 60 days before that so we could buy. The interesting point is let's see how the destination behaved for certain dates and we work on that. And finally, destination 4, which is in fact the one with a very previous peak, but it continues to have a peak at day 40. So you could detect the peaks of performance looking with a very short anticipation, but they look with certain broader anticipation, even 40 days, giving us the opportunity to start planning for this. This is almost a summary where they simulate that date A is to travel on December the 15th, where you already have the vacations traveling. We know that destination 1 has 1 day anticipation. You would start to stimulate it on December the 14th, and you still miss a lot more. But with destinations with broader anticipation, 25 days, 47 days, 41 days, you just subtract and you could estimate the date or the range of dates where you need to move this destination. So in that case, destination 4 needs to be moved from right now, let's say. Even destination 3 should start to be moving if we want to promote this specific destination. And how did we do? From just the search, we had a personalized dimension measuring the flight date, the date where they started, date of arrival, the seat number, the origin destination, the, the date in which they're quoting, the type of passenger, if it is an adult, a children, infant, what type of flight, like a round trip or one-way trip or multi-city. And from that little interaction from the search engine, we already exhausted 7 personalized dimensions with just one interaction. Now think about all the others types of interactions that could give us more information. You could exhaust these dimensions very fast. That's why it comes as a thing that helps to do it. If I already exhausted 7 possibilities or dimensions, then I'll have the same amount for each activity I could count on.
So from all of those dimensions, the best advantage here is that for any of those, all of these dimensions, we did not use data layer. So the first day of the war with Mexico, we punched it again, and then we saw the data that we could get from Google Tag Manager. So let's get the best use out of it, since they enable us to cut off a lot of IT time. At many times, this might be very complicated. Here we had a lot of things that might have seemed very difficult to obtain, and they were not really. So not that difficult, at least. What we needed on the layer was the full amount as added to the shopping cart of what we were not selling at the end of the day. So we used the layer to try to figure out which was the amount that I was not selling when losing people on the checkout process. And finally, this was one of the many implementations that we carried out, and what we attained were more kind of focused decisions. They could invest better on what to invest or where. Sales were already more reliable, which of course increased their CR. Now we understand much better what they do, what their users do, and this makes the whole figures increase. Sales figures also were more than what we expected. They had all these sales figures that were part of our expectations, but we went beyond those figures. It was more than our scope, and we were even more convinced that that's what we needed. The IT times also decreased. So a lot of pixels and the layers and things like that, like almost manually, and asking for the request of IT. Now they try to do everything through GTM. GTM has 280 tags, 267 triggers, so it's like a full thing. a monster, because most of the things are trying to be done through this tool to try to make the whole project faster, the implementation in general, to make the best decisions. So this is what I mentioned also before, that we had 28 personalized metrics, or dimensions, excuse me, and 3 metrics as well, which with a basic tool we wouldn't have been able to do so. Okay, this is what we wanted to share. I don't know if you have any questions or doubts.
That's-
Esto es para el buscador tuyo y el carrito de compras que tienes puesto en aeromexico.mx, me imagino.
That's for the shopping cart that you have in Mexico.mx. What I see as a user, by the way, is that most of the times that I do this search, I do it through browsers of browsers, right? The browser of browsers or engines of browsers. So how do you do that? Because I understand that it's kind of complicated, because I never finished that on the site of the airline. Well, that is the point, certainly, because we do not have access to those informations. So it really depends on... Okay, let's see. With some browsers, you might have different ways to try to exchange information, but most of the times we are usually very private with our information, so we might not find that information here. But you know what's the percentage that is done inside or outside? In general, total sales. Yes, they do know how much they sold, of course, in figures. At the end of the day, they know what they had on their own, and also other users. For users, it's much better the use of external browsers, because it's not only, of course, looking for one option, but it's looking for thousands of options at once. So I guess that's important for the measurements that you are doing, that are great, for sure, but that will certainly have this problem, because this will be increased. Yes, certainly. And especially because we have a lot of information that is quite wide, and that at the same time there's a black hole of information that you will never have access to. So with some of them, they have this exchange of information, but not in all cases. But we have already proven that this is not only for the comparison of browsers, but in Mexico, or in the idea of the site as well, it's much cheaper. So since it's a world comparison, it's very difficult to do that as well. Just as you work in an airlines, right? But then I work at hotels, and it's always very, very difficult to try to encourage them to go to your page directly. Because of the reservations, the costs associated to reservations are different. Booking, for example, might be more expensive to do it there. Then what would be the benefit that you are offering so that they would do that through your web directly? What's the benefit of going to you? In the case of Mexico, I would say that most of the people who buy there are loyal customers. They have the loyalty card, so if they buy directly to you, they will have more points, for example. There are certain advantages or benefits, such as, for example, the increase of, the upgrade of seats. But I would say it is an issue, trying not to buy somewhere else, because there are sometimes that the other sites offer lower prices, because they prefer to do so. It's impossible to compete with them many times. And definitely, I would say that's what the brand is offering, especially if you are a returning client. If it's more for clients that prefer the brand and that also trust people and etc., so they prefer to travel with us and not with someone else. So what would happen if you detect that a browser or browsers, an engine of browsers, is offering a lower rate to yours? Do you talk to them, claims, or what? Or you just accept it because it's selling? I'm not sure, to be honest. That's not the information I have in my hands. But as far as I understand, they cannot do anything, because you sell certain tickets to to this third party. That's with any other, like for example, Best Day, or many brands, right? They just buy whole lots of tickets or vouchers, and they have to work on their own on how they're going to sell it. That's their problem. Your negotiation already is gone. I mean, You are not bargaining for those products anymore. You're not making any profit on them either, because you already made profit when you sold them the first time. That's why the metrics of if you have a competitive tariff or not is important at the very beginning. If they are sometimes selling it at half price, it's not even worth it to try it to sell them, because you are not going to get there. It's not probable, let's say it, unless it's something that really wants to fly with you and through your site, but it's not very possible. People, of course, would prefer to buy cheaper. We need the microphone, please. I guess that is the benefit. If you buy with me, you will have to give them more benefits, of course, because an upgrade maybe in seats or things like that. But I would say that each brand will have to convince that it's worth it. It's worth it to pay a little bit more, but because you're going to receive many more benefits. Thank you for waiting for the microphone. I have one doubt about the variables you have on tax and triggers, the amounts. It happens at least here in Chile that you might offer, okay, have this tax or whatever, and they are reluctant because they say that it's going to, their surfing or browsing will not be as good as they expect, that it will be much slower. In your case, in Aerome, Mexico, how was that? Did that happen or not? Not at all. Not at all. Some clients state that, of course, that they don't want it because it's going to be slower, but not really. Here we have many other things, and in fact, it did not have any impact. What about users' impact? Because that's another one of the concerns that we have as clients, to have pixels or third people pixels on their site. They would say, maybe it will have an issue in browsing, or maybe I might feel unsafe, data, etc. Yes, your visits. Maybe someone would say retailers or airlines, whatever, they don't want to do so because they understand that if they put third parties, will not be the same. It might be a detriment for them. So the idea is that the uploading will be different or difficult, or also because they don't want to be their data stolen, of course. So it's a number or credit card or whatever. What happens is that you usually state what are the fields that you would like to fill out, and I have not seen one case where they have been able to have access to that information, by the way. He needs to use the microphone. Scott will talk about security, and we will listen to that in detail in that part of the workshop, okay? We did not have any issues with that. It's very accessible. In our case, we have the GDM, and we do that through the pixels, and we try to not to go through TI because we know that it's going to be much more difficult, that it takes time. So we try to do everything through GTM, and so far we have not had any issues. So they will certainly, they are certainly helping us to have this access, and other things are not necessary. It could happen that the pixel is going to steal information, but it's your pixel, so do not put pixels if you don't understand the implicances. That's the point. Especially because they could steal emails, etc., but it's what you are installing yourself. But if it's yours, then it's your information, then no harm, no problems.